In this episode of Retiring Today.
Brand new piece of legislation called the Secure Act and what it means for your retirement plan.
IRAs, required minimum distributions, and legacy planning.
We'll cover that and much more right now on Retiring Today. Welcome to Retiring Today. This episode is all about the Secure Act and what it means for your retirement plan. I'm here with Lauren Merkel. He's a certified financial planner, and Abby Huntrod's a retirement income certified professional. And Lauren and Abby, December 20th, President Trump signed into law the Secure Act. But Lauren, you didn't really find that it was much of a Christmas present when it comes to retirement planning.
It was not a Christmas present when it comes to retirement planning. In this industry, we have legislative changes that take place all the time, especially on the tax side of it. We're always commenting on different legislative laws that are passed. But every once in a while, there's a major piece of legislation that really transforms retirees and pre-retirees planning. And the Secure Act is one of those pieces of legislation. There's ramifications that we really won't see maybe for 5, even 10 years down the road. Some of them are going to be pretty immediate, but the real takeaway right away, we'll just give it to you. The real takeaway on this is review your legacy plans because many of you might have to change them right away.
Okay, so we know Lauren didn't think it was a Christmas present. Abby, you didn't either. But the lawmakers who passed it, they called it the Secure Act. So it's an acronym for setting every community up for retirement enhancement. So the lawmakers who passed it, Abby and Lauren, they thought there were some good things. So what are some of the maybe things that are getting maybe talked about with a positive light about this one?
I think the main theme, the main takeaway that's being talked about is giving more access to retirement plans to the general population. So there's a lot of different pieces of this bill, and a lot of it kind of stems around maybe part-time workers having access to a retirement plan, increasing contribution age limits or eliminating them actually. So a lot of it's just about making it more accessible for small businesses to set up 401k plans, those types of things, which is a good thing. I mean, giving people more access to be able to save for retirement is a positive thing.
Yeah, so there is a lot that goes into this bill, and we're going to dive into it, and you don't have to read the legislation because no one really wants to read legislation. But the good news is the person that you're working with to help with your retirement planning, they should probably have a pretty good idea of how this will affect your retirement plan. So you may want to ask your retirement planner about how does it affect the way we have things set up. And if they can't answer that, maybe you need to look at somebody who's more, well-versed in what's happening with retirement planning. But let's dive in. Let's dive into the Secure Act and what it means. First off, we're going to talk about how the Secure Act affects the 5 components of retirement planning, which we've called the Merkel retirement planning. Lauren, it's going to affect the income planning piece, the tax planning piece, and what else?
The healthcare, long-term care planning piece, the legacy planning piece, and then of course the investment planning piece. We talk all the time about how each one of these components, they all work together. And so we don't want to take a siloed approach when it comes to retirement planning and isolate your Social Security decisions with what you're doing with deriving income from your investment pieces or what you're going to do with passing your remaining assets to your beneficiaries. All of it works together. The decisions you make over here could have a direct influence on what takes place over here.
Okay, so that's the big picture. Let's talk about now some of the specific changes. First up, Abby, the RMD age change, the required minimum distribution age change. What's happening?
So the RMD age is increasing to 72. The way that it stood before, you didn't have to take required minimum distributions until you were 70 and a half. Which is important because it gives us a couple more years, a year or two, depending on where your birthday falls in the calendar year, to implement some of our tax planning strategies. Ultimately, in retirement, it's all about, keeping and spending the most that you possibly can. And effective tax planning is one of the best ways to help increase your spendable income. So having that extra couple years is going to be beneficial for a lot of families.
And just to clarify, it was effective January 1st. So that has happened. That is not, it's right now. Okay. So elimination of the Stretch Ira, that's another, piece of this legislation, Lauren.
Probably one of the biggest negative aspects of this legislation is when Molly talks about the Stretch IRA, what used to be available is when you would pass, let's say your 50-year-old son, John, he could stretch out distributions from his IRA over the rest of his lifetime. So potentially 30, 35 years, and when he takes distributions from those IRAs, he's going to be taxed on them. but the level of tax could be a lot less because he has a much longer distribution period to withdraw those monies. Now, that's been eliminated. So John has to take 100% of that account value out within only a 10-year period of time, as opposed to maybe 25 to 35 years before, which will probably increase the level of taxation that is applied to the IRAs that he receives from his parents.
Well, and then John had the ability to then pass that money on to his kids or his beneficiaries. So to be able to stretch that out through generations, I mean, that's powerful, and eliminating that is going to be devastating for a lot of families.
And also, that was eliminated and the tenure rule was put in place. What's the tenure rule mean?
Well, the 10-year rule just means that, let's say it's $1 million IRA. So John's parents passed away, left him $1 million in the IRA. That $1 million has to be liquidated from that account within that 10-year period of time.
Of the date of their death, essentially? Or?
It's from the year following the date of their death.
Okay.
So they have 10 years from that time frame. It all has to be liquidated. And when he liquidates those accounts, he's going to have to pay taxes on it. So what this does is it really alters the strategy of how John's parents would want to leave that money to John. And that's part of what we're going to talk about in today's show is not only here's some of the ramifications, here's some of the negative, here's some of the good, but here's some of the new potential solutions that you might want to work with your estate planning attorney, your retirement planner on to help implement as far as what's going to happen with your assets when you're gone.
Okay, how about the fundamental changes to IRAs and contributions, Abby?
So contributions to IRAs, now you can make tax-deductible contributions to your IRA as long as you have earned income, even after the age of 70 and a half. So as long as you're working, post 70 and a half, post 72, there is no age limit anymore to make those tax-deductible contributions. However, I'm afraid that there are going to be some people that fall into a trap here, because with the ability to contribute up until April for 2019, I worry that there's going to be some people that were 70 and a half in 2019, but they now heard about this legislative change and they think, oh, okay, great, I'm going to make an IRA contribution for 2019 because we have until April to do that. Well, actually, they can't make that contribution for 2019, but starting in 2020, they could. So there's a lot of nuances with any of these types of legislative changes, and you just want to make sure that you know what options you have available to you.
But with this particular piece of the legislation, once we get past that time frame, this is gonna clean up this contributory law a little bit. How many times do we talk to people who are 72 years old? They still have a part-time job or they're still working, making earned income. And the Uncle Sam is saying, yes, you can contribute to this Roth IRA, no problem at all. But this traditional or this deductible IRA you can't contribute to anymore. So it's really confusing the way the law was currently set. So this will not only open up another contributory vehicle for many retirees who are working part-time or maybe still have some earned income, but it'll simplify things a little bit for them as well.
I also think, too, some of these rules are interesting how they work in half years, like 70 and a half. I mean, I'm sure there was some reason why that was set up, but it's weird.
That's why I was happy to see 72. Right?
Yeah.
They could have done 72 and a half,
Right.
73 and a half, but they actually ended on an even number.
That just is
That's
easier to
pretty
keep.
cool.
I don't even know when my half birthday is. I'd really honestly have to think kind of hard. Now, of course, if I was 70 and a half, I might, because it's really important, but I don't know what day my half birthday is, so it was just a little off topic. But Qcd Advantage, how does that come into play with this particular change in the law?
So the way that things stood before, you could, once you got to 70 and a half, you could kind of designate, okay, I want to give this piece of money, this $5,000 directly to a qualified charity, and then you would not be paying the income tax on that. Now, the Secure Act did not change the QCD age of eligibility. So even though you don't have to take RMDs until you're 72, we still have, a year or two where we can execute on those QCDs, and maybe that's a part of our tax planning strategy where we're trying to minimize what we have in those tax deferred accounts from a tax efficiency standpoint. And then, now once you get to 72, we can continue to execute on those, but it just gives us a couple extra years.
So we've only been talking here for 5-6 minutes, and you can see how complex all of these things really are. There's some components of retirement planning that people can engage themselves and feel pretty confident and good about doing that. This is one piece of the retirement plan that I would really encourage you to consult the professionals, because there are so many if-thens. There are so many what-ifs, and making mistakes on this piece many of these mistakes are irreversible, and it could cost beneficiaries. It could send a lot more money to Uncle Sam than whatever was intended. This is stuff we really have to be careful with.
Yeah, we'll continue talking about some of those scenarios. We'll give you some numbers to kind of lay some of these changes out for you as we continue our discussion about the Secure Act right here on Retiring Today.
Because of the Secure Act, everything about retirement planning has changed. With the stretch provision eliminated, your beneficiaries could be subject to pay higher taxes on the legacy you leave behind. Attend an upcoming retirement planning class to learn how these changes could impact your finances, your beneficiaries, and your retirement. Go to merkelclass.com to sign up today and learn how the Secure Act may affect you.
You've worked a lifetime to prepare for retirement, but getting organized can be overwhelming. Important decisions need to be made about Social Security, health care, and retirement income. Where do you begin? At our Journey to Retirement class, you'll learn how to maximize your Social Security benefits, choose your best health care options, and avoid losses during the next market correction. Spots for this class are limited. Call today or sign up online at merkelclass.com.
Welcome back to Retiring Today. In this episode, we're talking about some legislation that was recently passed in Washington called the Secure Act and how it affects your retirement plan. I'm here with Lauren Merkel. He's a certified financial planner, and Abby Huntrod's a retirement income certified professional. They sit down with people every day and plan their retirements. And you guys, a lot of what you do is help people pass on their IRAs effectively to their loved ones. And the Secure Act definitely changes, Lauren, the way you do that. And you can kind of show us in numbers.
It completely changes the way that beneficiaries receive IRA money. For the last decade or so, we've been helping people set up these stretch IRAs where when they pass, their kids can stretch out the required minimum distributions over the whole course of their lifetime. And now, based on the current law, that has been condensed. That distribution period has been condensed to only 10 years. So we're going to give you a specific example of underneath the old law versus the current law, and then you can see the difference that it makes in the beneficiary's options and potentially the level of tax that they pay on their inheritance. So the first one is underneath the old law. Steve has $1 million IRA. Steve has one kid. Child's name is Billy. Let's say Billy's 50 years old, so he's not really a child, he's 50, but he's Steve's child. Steve passes away, Billy inherits $1 million. Underneath the old law, he could stretch out the distributions over the entire life expectancy. So let's say that's 25 years. He takes out $40,000 a year, the required minimum distribution. Now, Steve's making good money. This is in his peak wage earning years. So he takes that $40,000 out, and that's all taxable. He adds that to his current income. And now, let's say his current income is $120,000 a year. That's in the 24% tax bracket for Steve. He pays 24% on the $40,000 distribution, and he stretches it out over his entire life expectancy. So the level of tax that he pays on the $40,000 is less than underneath the current law. Because underneath the current law, he can't stretch it out over his life expectancy. All of that $1 million has to be distributed within only a 10-year period of time. So if he takes it out $100,000 a year for 10 years, the $1 million is gone. But now it pushed him into the 32% bracket because he's still making the $120,000. Add another $100,000 onto it, he's going to pay 32% on the required distribution, or the distribution he takes from the $1 million IRA. So the beneficiaries now have less flexibility on how to take the money out, which means potentially they could pay a lot more tax on these distributions.
And Abby, there are a couple of exceptions that you wanted to make sure people know about.
There's always an exception to the rule. So a couple of the exceptions with the 10-year distribution rule. Let's say Steve doesn't have any kids, and instead he wants to leave his $1 million IRA to his brother that's maybe 2 years younger. Well, in that circumstance, his brother has the ability to then stretch that $1 million IRA out over his life expectancy. There's also an exception with minor children. So if you leave money to, directly to grandkids maybe, or you happen to have children that are still minors, then they have the ability to stretch that IRA out to their age 21. And then at 21, that 10-year clock starts. There's also some chronic illness exceptions and those types of things, but it's good to know that there are, some specific situations where the 10-year rule does not necessarily apply.
So this is going to create some really interesting planning decisions. I mean, let's just take Steve and his kid Billy. Let's say Billy has kids. So Steve could leave all of that $1 million to Billy, and then Billy has to take it out, all of it, within a 10-year period of time. Or Steve could decide to leave a part of it to Billy and then a part of it to his 2 grandkids, and then there's 3 10-year distribution periods, so 30 years that they can spread that tax out over, decreasing the amount that goes to Uncle Sam from the $1 million and increasing the amount that stays within Steve's family. So not all of it went to Billy right away. Part went to Billy, part went to the grandkids, so that's the negative aspect if Steve wanted it all to go to Billy, but Uncle Sam in that case at least got less. So it's going to create some interesting decisions for IRA owners.
Okay, some other interesting decisions revolve around the spousal rollover trap. Explain what that is.
Well, this is another one of the interesting decisions, and this all comes down to making sure that your accounts are properly titled, because what we're talking about here is what's called the disclaiming provision. And this disclaiming provision has to be done the right way, and if you don't title the accounts the right way, then it leaves your beneficiaries with few options as it relates to the disclaiming provision. So let's say Steve was married. So Steve is married to Pam. Still a $1 million IRA. Steve can leave the full $1 million to Pam, but statistically speaking, women will live about 2.5 years longer than men. So Steve passes away, leaves the $1 million to Pam. A couple years later, Pam passes away. Then Billy receives all of the money, and he has 10 years to take the distributions, and again, it's taxed. Whereas what Pam could have done is she knew she didn't need the full $1 million to do what she wanted to do for the rest of her life. So instead of receiving the full $1 million, she could disclaim all of it or a part of it. So let's say she only wanted half. So she took $500,000 of it, disclaimed the other $500,000 to their son Billy, and that 10-year clock starts right away on the piece that Billy received, the $500,000 that Billy received. But it doesn't start on the $500,000 that Pam received until she passes away. So let's say she lives another 5 years. 5 years later, what's left goes to Billy, and then another 10-year clock starts on that. So the spousal trap is all of it just goes to Pam, and then all of it goes to, right, they're not spreading it out over a longer period of time.
Because you can turn that $1 million into several times more than that if you kind of stretch it out through the family.
Yeah, the idea is to keep more money within the family and less money to Uncle Sam. So stretching it out over more distribution periods oftentimes will enable families to do that. But if it all just goes very linear, goes from Steve to Pam, Pam to Billy, now there's one 10-year distribution window instead of multiple.
But maybe what if Pam disclaimed part of it to Billy, and then on hers that she kept, then she put the grandkids on as, I think there's going to be a way that we kind of build out the same idea of a stretch IRA. It's just going to take a little bit more intentional planning and proper titling for sure. So there'll be opportunities.
There's going to be many options. It's not going to be the options that we've been accustomed to, and it's definitely not going to be as simple as what we're accustomed to. But we have to get a little bit creative. We've already come up with a number of different strategies. There'll be more strategies that continue to be developed, so stay tuned. But we have a number of them already. It's just a matter of evaluating what plans you have in place. Compare that versus the law and what the law is going to allow you to do. Compare that versus what you wish to have happen with your resources when you're gone. And then make sure everything you can do to the best of what the law affords is done with your accounts.
Well, yeah, and coming up in one of our episodes we're going to be doing, we're going to talk to an estate planning attorney about really just diving in on what this could mean. And I think what he and you talk about too is a three-legged kind of approach of a retirement planner, an estate planning attorney, and a CPA, and kind of all working together.
Oftentimes it takes multiple professionals to really incorporate a well-written retirement plan, because nobody knows everything. Nobody is the best at everything, but if you get a really good estate planning attorney, a really good CPA, a really good retirement planner, all within the same room working on your behalf, how powerful can that be, especially with such complex legislation as the Secure Act?
Okay, we'll continue our conversation about the Secure Act when Retiring Today continues.
finally enjoying your retirement. But there are so many things to consider. How long will your income last? What will you do about long-term care? How do you set up your legacy to last for generations? Now is the perfect time to attend our Boost Your Retirement class. This class will help you take your retirement plan to the next level and set you up for success. Spots for this class are limited. Call today or sign up online at merkelclass.com.
You've worked a lifetime to prepare for retirement, but getting organized can be overwhelming. Important decisions need to be made about Social Security, health care, and retirement income. Where do you begin? At our Journey to Retirement class, you'll learn how to maximize your Social Security benefits, choose your best health care options, and avoid losses during the next market correction. Spots for this class are limited. Call today or sign up online at merkelclass.com.
Welcome back to Retiring Today. We're talking about the Secure Act, some legislation recently passed in Washington. I'm here with Lauren Merkel. He's a certified financial planner, and Abby Huntrod's a retirement income certified professional. They talk about this stuff every day with families and individuals. And what we're basically trying to do today is tell people, here's some of the things you need to know. But there is a lot when it goes into this. So your retirement planner is the one who should really be following this, but we want to give you some education and some takeaways. And education is something that you guys are really passionate about at Merkel Retirement Planning. We'll talk about some of the classes in just a minute, but a few more takeaways that I know you want people to know about were, Abby, first the 529 plan and how this might affect that.
Yeah, the Secure Act does impact the 529 options that you have. So 529 plans are state-run savings plans for education expenses. It used to be that you could not use money from a 529 to pay for student loans. There is some language within the Secure Act that says you can use up to $10,000 of a 529 to pay off student debt. However, because these are state-run programs, that has not actually passed in Iowa yet. So hopefully it does. I mean, I think that would be a positive change. Just because once your kids or grandkids beneficiaries on those 529 accounts are through college or through the schooling that they're attending, then a lot of times you're stuck either leaving that money in the 529 or saving it for the next generation. So this just allows for a little bit of extra wiggle room on maybe if you overfunded the account, now you have options on using it towards outstanding student loan debt.
And another takeaway that we wanted to mention was Roth conversions, which can be a powerful strategy. How does that relate to the Secure Act? Well,
you couple the Secure Act, which now really limits the distribution period that beneficiaries have on their IRA monies that they inherit, with the fact that we're in a historically low tax environment. This just really magnifies the importance for many pre-retirees and even retirees, the importance of Roth conversions. Basically taking money from your pre-tax accounts and switching it over into a Roth IRA. You do have to pay taxes on that money when you make that conversion, but with tax rates where they're at for many people, if you can do that conversion at 10, 12, 22, maybe even 24% for some people makes sense. But again, it's very individualized. Some people it makes sense to do Roth conversions, some people it doesn't. That's why you need to take a look at your specific situation to identify, do Roth conversions make sense for you now? Maybe they don't. Maybe 2 years from now they will. But it's definitely worthwhile for people to look at, because of the tax rates where they're at compared to historical tax rates, where we think tax rates are going, we think they're going to increase. And also with the Secure Act really limiting what beneficiaries can do from a tax mitigation standpoint.
And Lauren, you talked about specific situations, and retirement is so customized. Nobody's retirement looks exactly like the next person. And we've kind of even segmented that education piece that we alluded to into some specific segments and specific classes for those segments. Abby, we've recently added the Journey to Retirement class to the portfolio of classes. Who's that for and what will they learn?
Journey to Retirement is for those that are within 5 to 10 years of retiring. So you have a lot of decisions that you have to make at point of retirement or maybe shortly after, like your Social Security decisions, pension decisions. But really we touch on all 5 components. So the tax planning, the income planning, the legacy planning, the investment planning, and then the healthcare and the long-term care planning. So Journey is just going to look at those 5 components with kind of that magnifying glass from a pre-retiree's perspective.
Okay, and Boost Your Retirement, that's a class recently added. Who's that one for, Lauren?
The Boost Your Retirement class is really it was really designed for those who are already retired. So we're going to focus on the concerns that retirees have. Specifically, most retirees get to change their Medicare supplemental plans every year. What does that look like? Tax strategies are always going to be a part of any type of retirement plan, but also estate planning strategies, and also focused around RMDs. So now, when you obtain the age of 72, you're mandated to take distributions out. So we're going to hone in on qualified charitable distribution strategies, other RMD strategies, legacy transfer strategies, anything that might particularly pertain to those who are already retired.
And do you guys feel like we also have a women in retirement class too? I don't want to not forget to say that. That's for specifically for women and some of the challenges they face: singles, divorcees, or widows. But do you guys feel like the Secure Act affects Boost, Journey, and women? It's something you're going to talk about in all those classes.
We will be talking about the Secure Act in each one of the classes because it will impact almost everybody. And because it is still really new, most people don't know the nuances of it, and we're still trying to figure out the strategies and solutions that will really benefit most people. So we're going to make it a really integral part of each one of the classes to kind of spread the word of this new legislation and how it may impact you and some of the solutions that you can use to still do the things that you want to do.
Okay, we've got about 30 seconds for the takeaways from today's show, and I think, Abby, it's really important for people to reevaluate. What do they need to reevaluate?
Any existing legacy plan that you have in place, whether it involves a conduit trust or just simply the titling of the accounts, those strategies are going to change as a result of the Secure Act. So having the conversation with your estate planning attorney and your retirement planner is going to be crucial to make sure that those goals and wishes are executed on the way that you want them to be.
Another takeaway, Lauren, an RMD plan.
RMD plan, it's going to happen to almost everybody, so you need to have a plan that's prepared, hopefully before you obtain RMD age, so when you get there, it's not a big surprise.
And the third takeaway is to review your trust working with your trusted estate planner. So that's it on the Secure Act. We've got a lot more resources, some stuff up on our YouTube channel, Merkle Retirement Planning. We've done a podcast on the Secure Act, so if you like to listen to podcasts, wherever you get them, you can find the podcast on the Secure Act. And we'll continue to talk about the Secure Act, how it affects your retirement on this show. It's Retiring Today, and we thank you for watching.
You've worked a lifetime to prepare for retirement, but getting organized can be overwhelming. Where do you begin? At our Journey to Retirement class. Call today or sign up online at merkleclass.com.
Finally enjoying your retirement, but there are so many things to consider. How long will your income last? What will you do about long-term care? How do you set up your legacy to last for generations? Now is the perfect time to attend our Boost Your Retirement class. This class will help you take your retirement plan to the next level and set you up for success. Spots for this class are limited. Call today or sign up online at merkleclass.com.
From our family to yours, we hope you have a wonderful weekend.
We hope you enjoyed the show.
We'll see you next week.